All right, welcome back, guys. So I think we left off here and we saw a quick overview of how built-in risk management cloud solution can ensure that your controls are audit ready and your implementation is secure. And we talked about a very high level, like there are 3 activities before going live with ERP Cloud that helps achieve this goal, and a continual process after going live that helps achieve this. And let's go over each of these in a next level of detail. Starting tomorrow, we'll be delving into each of these different areas in a lot more detail with applicable labs and use case discussions, just so you guys know. So starting with the first one, before going live with ERP Cloud, designing secure roles and ensuring that your roles are free of separation of duties. So I think we went over this slide, just rehashing that one more time. These are the steps that needs to be followed in order to design secure roles. So you may design your role in Security Console, which is part of Oracle Fusion. And next, after you design your role, you would typically analyze this role using Advanced Access Controls, which is a solution which is part of Risk Management Cloud. And the idea is to essentially use an iterative process to clean up any kind of separation of duties conflicts that you see within the role itself that you're designing. And finally, that ends up making it a secure role. So the reason why this is important, and this is why it's part of our methodology, is because we've seen these challenges, and I guess you guys, as you're implementing for your customers, and you have been assigned the task of looking at the roles that the users would have, you may have had a lot of challenges that customers have had. Typically, like a lot of verifications happen over spreadsheets, Word documents, emails, and just pure observation rather than like a streamlined solution and a tool that actually analyzes at the underlying fine-grained privilege level. So a lot of these manual activities or verification methods typically are performed at the role level. While it may be okay for to do this for other third-party applications, for ERP Cloud, which has so many possible configurations and privileges that can be assigned to users, you may be missing a lot by just performing these manually. And so that's where advanced access controls power comes in, where it's able to perform fine-grained privilege level access and actually perform contextual analysis by reading data access security, etc. That will be going over in a lot more detail tomorrow. So, and how we do it is essentially just at a very high level. You create your initial role design, and this happens in a non-production. You create your initial role design, you use advanced access controls, pre-built analysis to refine the results that you see. If there are any separation of duties conflicts, you either remove the conflicts within and redesign the role, or you may accept some of those as and deploy mitigating controls. So these are some of the screenshots, and you're going to be going over these lab activities, and you're going to be seeing that hands-on tomorrow. So let's say there is a role that has been designed and in the procure to pay business area, and we are worried that the role may have conflicts of users. When they have been assigned this role, they may have this conflict, or the role itself may have conflicting privileges between creating supplies and creating payables invoice. That's what the focus of this particular step is, that you just look within the role itself that you're designing to see whether the role itself has separation of duties. That we also call that as intra-role violations, or violations within a single role. So you deploy an access model like that, and you come up with some results, And let's say if a test user that you can see here, you see some conflicts here, and you can visualize them. And the visualization helps figure out, like, are we seeing conflicts within a role or between roles if there are, well, once we are in the second step. So let's just focus on this one, like, are you seeing any intra-roles? As you can see here, we do see an intra-role violations which has inadvertently been introduced while designing the role itself. So the visualization of the results helps to identify what the navigation path is to the offending roles that is causing this conflict. And finally, you go back to Security Console, or you ask your security or administrator to redesign the role. And this could be an iterative process, because roles can be pretty complicated too, like with multiple hierarchies and things like that. And since organizations have complex business processes, so could roles have a lot of interactions between different duties that may lead to inadvertently these kind of separation of duties conflicts. So after you perform the redesign, when you rerun the model analysis, you may either see no conflicts or you may see reduced conflicts. Either way, like I said, it's an iterative process. In this case, we took a simple example, so there are no conflicts here. So you know that the role is free of separation of duties in that particular business area that we tested it for. And the reason I talk about being an iterative process is because you may need more than one model to test in that particular area. And as you can see later tomorrow, probably we'll present that there are Oracle provides a lot of pre-built access models just right out of the box. And so you can deploy all relevant ones in the specific business area that you want, and then test each and every model against the role that you designed, whether there are intra-role violations, and then mitigate them as need be. And we'll see that in a lot more details. So a customer story. This is for designing secure roles. So we did a joint workshop with a large retailer, and the retailer has like over 100,000 plus employees and has 65 plus roles, and they were implementing HCM Cloud. And so as part of the workshop, we ran analysis on 6 of 13 SOD rules that were required by the auditors. So auditors can also specify what kind of rules are needed based on any kind of risk assessment or control assessment that was performed maybe in the last time around, last quarter. So they may have recommendations that, okay, and so in this case, like they wanted 13 SOD rules to be enforced right away, out of the box. And then we tested, as part of the workshop, we took 6 of them, and we focused on the results of 1 of them. So although all the 6 generated potential SOD violations, we focused our reviews on only 1. And that one was, in this case, it's an HCM. They had their risks around, and I think a lot of organizations who implement HCM Cloud will see that their risks are mostly around payroll and time and labor, because that's where a lot of fraudulent activities may happen. So you want to tighten up your security in the right way. So in this case, the model that we focused the results on was managed payroll and time and labor, and we found there were 154 intra-role analysis violations. And violations could be actually emanate from different reasons. One is there is an actual separation of duties issue, so that will be to remediate that, you would actually potentially redesign the role. There could be reasons of the conflict could also be any kind of extensions that are done, page composer extensions, in which case some of those conflicts may not be actual conflicts, which you may need to exclude those results using something known as access conditions that we will learn more tomorrow. And there could be some of the risks which are needs to be accepted because you need users to perform their businesses, and so there may be some high-level HCM administrator kind of role, users who may need access to complete their work, like may have conflicting access, in which case you accept that risk and then you deploy some compensating controls, in which case they have compensating controls like some operational reports, an approval process in place, etc. So the next step in ensuring audit readiness of your controls and your overall compliance process is designing secure role assignments. So the first one, we focus on just a single role, individual role. In this particular step, we focus on how to analyze role assignments that are assigned to users and then check whether these are free of separation of duties. And as mentioned before, like roles may be assigned in a variety of different ways, like either manually using Security Console or using the role mapping tool within Fusion or by an external user provisioning tool. Either way, once the roles are assigned, you can use advanced access controls now to analyze these role assignments and check whether they have separation of duties within roles. In this particular case, we are worried about conflicts which are inter-roles. So there are conflicts introduced between two different roles or one or more different roles, two or more rather. And then final goal is to secure the role assignments. So again, like some of the premises, like why this is so important is because of the same challenges that we've seen organizations repeatedly have, that they tend to try to do these checks using spreadsheets, which gets some very unwieldy because, and also the checks that are done a lot of times are actually at the role level. And as we know that it's the underlying privileges that are basically the integral part of any access path, not the role itself, because roles can change. And so it's not a complete analysis. So that's where in a complicated business process like ERP Cloud or HCM Cloud, it is imperative that we use the power of a tool like advanced access controls to analyze these role assignments. And again, it performs deep analysis. It not only checks at the fine-grained privilege level and analyzes separation of duties, but you could also tell the engine via rules to look at the data access for different users and check whether there a set of conflicts are actual conflicts or not. And we'll be going into a lot more details tomorrow about this. And how you do that is, again, using in a non-production pod, you are basically performing a trial. So the first step was you remediate, you freed your roles from separation of duties. Now you have assigned these roles to your users, and you run a trial that, okay, if I assign these roles to my users using any of the methodologies that I talked about of role assignment, and I run my advanced access controls engine against some rules which are of that specific business area, am I seeing conflicts which are real conflicts? And if I do, then again, we go into the remediation processes. We remediate these results, and this could be as simple as removing access from the user, or it could actually go back and have you look at your role design again, because that could also be the case that you missed something during your role design and now you have to go back and do that. But at least you're doing that before going live, and so you're still making sure that going forward at go live, your roles and role assignments are secure. And these are some of the steps that you typically follow. So you still use the same access models, except that in this case we are focused more on inter-role violations. So as you can see here, there's a user called Alberto Diaz who has conflicts between supplier privileges and payables privileges. So you can visualize this again, And when you visualize, you can now see there are inter-role violations, like violations introduced between two or more roles. And that's where you identify, you are able to clean up and remediate role assignments and make it secure. And this is going into into a little bit of more detail that after you perform, you clean up your roles. Now you're in a position to actually finalize your roles and deploy them as controls, where we talked about like how you can deploy once and let automation take over. This is the way that you do it, like you deploy the models as access models as controls, and you'll see the same thing for transactions also later in the after going live phase. And you let automation, you set the analysis to run frequently at a particular frequency, and it will keep looking for issues which are there after going live. And as you see issues, you remediate them, and there's a built-in workflow process within advanced controls within Risk Management Cloud that enables you to document and perform and provide an audit trail to your auditors if need be of what remediation activities were performed. So another customer story about specifically about role assignments. We work with a large tech manufacturer, or rather there was an implementation that we observed, who ran the enter journal and post journal, which is a very popular one that in the financials domain organizations tend to see the importance for a high risk area. They ran this control and found 3,000 plus incidents, and a large number of these incidents are because of implementation users. So they were actually, in a way, if you call it like kind of a false positive, but still something important to see. And repeating again, like this analysis was performed, the advanced controls was able to surface these 3,000 plus incidents because it performed deep analysis and was able to analyze it at the privilege level, not just at the role level. And once the 3,000 incidents were surfaced, they were able to perform more due diligence and see whether a bulk of these were because of false positives or not. So they added some data security analysis logic within their models, and they were able to reduce the incidents by about 25%. So 25% of incidents were kind of false positives, and and the reason in this particular case, the logic, the additional data security logic that was added was to check that do I have accesses which are across multiple business units? Because if a single user has conflicting access across one or two or more business units, most of the organizations would deem that as not a conflict. So you are able to exclude those incidents, and thereby you're focusing only on the real issues. So this customer was able to do that using advanced access control. So this is essentially just a pictorial view or visual view of how the access models work and how do you tune them. And we'll go, like I said, we'll go into more details tomorrow. The goal is to show that, most subscribers or all subscribers can actually define whatever analysis they want in the advanced access controls tool. So typically, models would analyze the user's access, and these are some of the terminologies which are important, which will be introduced tomorrow in a little more detail. But just to kick it off, this just gives you a very, very high-level view of what the different terminologies are. So entitlement is a way that you can group or perform an action. So there may be an activity like creating suppliers, but there may be a lot of access points or privileges that make up creating privileges, creating supplier, and so that we term as entitlement. It's group of related access points that enable a user to perform a particular functionality. So that's entitlements, and conditions are what we described a little earlier before. It's used to fine-tune your results. Like if you get a lot of access access control incidents, there may be some that are not real issues, and you can actually exclude them using conditions. So here's an example, like there is a pre-built model which is create suppliers. I know there's a number here, but it's actually the ID for the model, access model, which is create suppliers and create tables invoices. So you're looking for conflicts of users who have privileges within these entitlements. So either create suppliers and create tables invoice. When they have both of these within assigned to them, then they can perform conflicting duties which are of high risk, and that's what this model attempts to identify, any users who have that conflict. And example of how we define, typically like in a shared service group, an individual might routinely manage suppliers for one business unit, as it says, but can also manage invoices in another. So it can be in a shared service group or maybe in a small business units where there are a number of people looking at various functional operations or functions are very less. And so you could have an employee wearing multiple hats in a smaller business unit. In a shared service group, this is very, very common. So what advanced access controls is able to do is read any kind of setup performed, data access setup performed in the managed data access page for financial setup and maintenance, and is able to perform fine-tune the analysis based on any kind of conditions that you add, and it reads the data access setup in managed data access page. So this is like some of the screenshots that entail like the product showcases the product itself, where you are able to add an access condition to fine-tune your analysis. So going back to the example of the customer story where they were able to add, they wanted to exclude results where they found that a lot of their users actually had conflicts across business units, and they deemed that not to be an actual conflict. So you can add an access condition to enable the analysis to exclude those. So in this case, it shows that you want to focus on a specific business unit and just focus on the results. This is another way that you can focus on one set of results at a time. You can actually fine-tune your results by focusing on one business unit at a time. So this just showcases that particular use case. And then you run your analysis, and then you validate results. And finally, the third step, after you have made your roles secure, your role assignments secure, you take stock of that, and then the last step before going live is that, okay, I think I'm ready to assign them to my users, but do my users have access to the right roles? So that's what happens in certification process of user access process, which is also part of advanced access controls. So in this process, it's a three-step process again, certifying of user access. And in this, the good thing about the solution here is that you don't have to actually certify all your roles or all access. You can only certify, pick and choose only the ones that are of highest risk to you, and the access certification tool enables you to do that. It enables you to create a certification, and where you identify only specific roles that your organization deems as the highest risk, and then certify users only for those roles. So the first step in the tool is that you identify the roles. So you and you will see that by identifying roles, it's not you as a user who's setting up the access certification. You are not identifying the roles. You're just simply telling the tool that I need to certify any roles that have these abilities. And so you specify something like an entitlement which has these abilities, and then the tool automatically determines what roles have those abilities and which users have those roles, and then presents that in front of the auditor. And then the auditor can go in and, or the owner of particular different business processes, they can go in and approve whether the right users in their business process area have these roles. And again, this is something that time and again we have seen a lot of organizations to kind of not overlook, and but this is actually crucial because it actually has a huge benefit in reducing risk. So like I think this is just a rehash of what I just said. The challenges are typically there's a lot of certification methods again done by email or by spreadsheets or by some fragmented reports, and they tend to miss a lot of different things, and which leads to costly redesign of roles later on in certification. So it also, the other issue is that there is no way that I mean, most of the time organizations find it really hard to actually pinpoint on which roles to actually certify, and so what they do is they end up certifying everything, which is becomes a very inefficient process and excessive waste of the assessor's time. So as opposed to a solution where you are able to have the tool identify the right roles for you that presents the highest risk, and then you have a streamlined automated workflow where auditors and owners of different business areas are able to check off which users should have access to the roles that are presented in front of them, and then which one needs investigation. So we'll be seeing examples of that tomorrow, and we'll be probably doing a lab for that. And this happens again before going live with ERP Cloud, because you need to certify that the right users have the right roles even before you put it out in the production and in the normal side use of the business, the ERP Cloud starts. And that helps a lot, because now you have not only identified the high-risk roles that need certification, you have now identified which users should rightly have those roles, and so you have certified that. And that's not just good for risk purposes, lowering risk, but also to report to auditors. So some screenshots which you'll be seeing in a lot more detail tomorrow, like you can kick off, an administrator kicks off a certification and then initializes it using by specifying which abilities need certification. And once those abilities are specified, the tool has a process by which it determines which roles have those abilities and which users have those roles. And then it presents a worksheet to the auditor, and the auditor can now go in and check off whichever is good to go, which like by a particular role they will check like, okay, these users should have these roles and these should not, and some may need investigations, etc. So this is the owner overview. Finally, there is, and you'll see this in the tool tomorrow again, there is a way that the owner of each of the business processes that are involved in the certification process can actually take stock of where they stand in a particular certification workflow. And these are just some of the screenshots that you'll be seeing a lot more tomorrow. And that's the first step, 3, that essentially helps you take stock of your security and makes your user access secure. So what we saw was that you design your secure role, you start with that, you remove your intra-role violations. Then once you assign these roles to users, then you may again have a set of conflicts by, you may have users with excessive access. So you you remediate that by designing secure role assignments using advanced access controls. And finally, you ensure that the right users can certify, has access to the right roles. So that's using the process of certification of user access. So I'll pause here for a little while. We'll probably take a look at some questions. And then we'll resume in, again, we'll take a 10-minute break. And we'll resume in 10 minutes. And then Lakshmi is going to take over and then take you through what happens after going live and what are the key activities then. Henry, I think we can pause the recording.